past these days, we delete calls and truly actually delete them. Don't make sure they're not sitting on your employees' servers because then they're discoverable. But delete them and do it so also for privacy reasons.
There's too many cases out there that have privacy concerns when you're on the phone with somebody and they mention something that's confidential, that if that gets taken or disclosed to your team or some third party, source that gets access to that data, that could be an issue, and it's just expensive to maintain.
It would have been nice to have had my degree because I got a lot of people I want to sue right now. All right, welcome back to another episode of Don't Say That. And get yourself and your butt sued by, I don't know, there's like 1,000 people right now looking to sue everybody. I was just joking with Greg before we started. I said one of the biggest mistakes I believe I have made in my life is that I should have gone to law school. I should have finished my bullshit bachelor's degree that I never used, and then I should have gone to law school. And I would have, I don't know if I
Water
ever wanted to
basket
like
weaving is not a career. I'm sorry. Okay.
what, yeah. I don't think I would have wanted to start a firm. I don't know. Y'all, the way I the way I am as a client, I don't know if I want to be on the, on the other side of that. So, but having said that, it would have been nice to have had my degree because I got a lot of people I want to sue right now. I was just joking with Greg beforehand. I was like, damn it, Greg, catch up and get more lawyers so that I can start suing. There's at least 6 or 7 people I want to smack around a little bit. But anyways, side joke. We are going to talk about a topic today that has come up in the group. So, how do we be part of the group? I'm so glad you asked. It gives me a chance to pitch. Get the book, don'tsaythat.com/go, or just go to don'tsaythat.com and get the damn book. And then we also have Compliant Academy, which is up and running. Go to compliantacademy.com. You got to be a part of this. We're building one of the coolest communities committed to ethical, truthful, and compliant marketing, where you actually get access to us, you get access to Greg every month, and do town halls, and you don't have to pay Greg's ridiculous $5,000 an hour fees that he charges. He doesn't charge that, by the way, just joking. So the URLs are below, and Complyly, okay, doesn't replace an attorney, but it's a great start to get you to have an understanding of how your copy is going to be perceived. Lots of cool features coming there, so make sure you join us. But inside of the group, so the way you get into our FTC Compliance Connect group is you buy the book. That's it. And the book, literally, the digital version is about to drop to $5, and the physical version for US base is $10, and I'll ship you a copy. We lose money on this. I hope you clearly understand that. We are building a community and investing and hope to make money here soon. So come support us, be a part of the community. In the community, Greg, this question came up, which was interesting. And they said, hey, they run a telesales team, so they have a sales floor. And one of the customers who has not bought has requested that the call be sent to them. And when I was reading this, the person said, hey, I plan on replying by saying like, oh, for FTC reasons, we don't send it. I was like, oh, pause. Like, I don't think that's probably an appropriate
That's
answer.
not true. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to do that. But my stomach, I mean, like my heart fell to the pit of my stomach when I saw that request. We'd never really received it, but I'm like, damn, I don't, now that I know, I'm like, ugh, I don't know if calls or anything should be sent outside. So I don't know the answer. I immediately screenshotted it, sent it to Greg, and we decided, hey, you know what? This has come up before for Greg as well, so we should make an episode about it. So Greg, here's the situation. Someone's got a telesales team. They've got themselves. They're doing sales calls. Sales calls are recorded, and you have to let people know that you're recording them. It's legally required. It's part of TCPA. So the customer knows it's being recorded, or the potential customer, the lead, knows it's being recorded. At the end, they send you an email the next day, say, hey, I'd like a copy of our call. What do you do?
So I'm going to break this down into two components, so that there's a couple of things. It's not just when clients are asking for call recordings, but I'll get it all the time where I'll have a client who has sales contractors or employees that want to review the calls that they had with sales individuals. And it creates an issue because if you have this, we've talked about this a lot, like having a document retention policy in place to have a standard operating procedure and how long you keep sales recorded calls. Let me talk about that first. So when you have a document retention policy in place, the whole purpose of this is just not to keep a whole bunch of extra data. Now, the regulatory body will say, well, you're just getting rid of data to hide what was said on the call, and that's not the case at all. There's too many cases out there that have privacy concerns when you're on the phone with somebody and they mention something that's confidential, that if that gets taken or disclosed to your team or some third party, source that gets access to that, data, that could be an issue, and it's just expensive to maintain. So when you have a document retention policy as it pertains to telephone solicitations, Zoom, or telephone calls itself, then what I would suggest is this. The TCPA requires you to keep the call for 24 months if you collect an authorization for the credit card for that transaction. What does that mean? It means if you're on the phone or on Zoom, and the way you get payment is you take that over the Zoom or the telephone, and that's your authorization to charge the card, you have to keep that portion of the call, not the whole call, but that portion of the call for 24 months. Now, a lot of telemarketers, they don't actually take information on the phone. They'll give a URL or a QR link that allows them to go to a landing page where they actually go in and put their information online. Don't need to keep that for 24 months. So say you don't need to keep the information for 24 months, but you have individuals in your organization that want to get access to that data, whether it's a client or some contractor or employee. So in that case, what do? We have a document retention policy says we're going to keep this for 30 days, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to get rid of it. Well, but if you give it to a consumer or you give it to an employee or a contractor, how can you control that if they can download it and everything else? So what I recommend doing, first off, with employees and contractors who want to review their calls, do not send them the file. Make sure whatever document storage service you use, that you have an ability to share a link that expires. So, hey, I'm going to give you access to this link for 24 hours. You can review it, cannot download it. And that way, if you have any questions, you can listen to what was said at the presentation or call. So I look at that as if you have a client that comes to you, so individual employee contractor, that way they can't download it. That's the way you should do it 100% of the time. Don't just allow this, because what happens is, and this happened in a case that I'm aware of, the contractor employee downloaded the telephone calls, company got rid of all of them, but they had it, so it was discoverable. So just don't keep that. First and foremost, make sure it's a link that expires and they cannot download. That second one, client comes to you and asks for the information. So I would bifurcate it in a couple of different ways. If the sales call happened 2 days ago and the client's asking you for access and you've disclosed the call's recording and you have it in your possession, be pretty disingenuous to say, well, the FTC doesn't allow you to do this, because that's not true. That's a misrepresentation. So a better statement would be to do this, is say, one, we have a company policy in place so we don't share that information because it includes proprietary information from our sales organization we don't like to share with others. And in the past, we've had people take those call recordings and try to duplicate it in their own sales process or channel. Now, if your offer doesn't really align with that, meaning you're teaching real estate training and the client is buying education for real estate training, that'd be hard to say, well, we're not going to give it out. Versus if you have an offer that's teaching individuals how to do high ticket sales, and in that case, it's a high ticket sales, and you are doing high ticket sales, then it makes 100% sense to say, hey, this is proprietary and you shouldn't get access to it. So,
well, even in the original one, Greg, it's still that's a really good way to put it, because what if that person's just pretending and they actually run a real estate education company and they want a copy of a call to train their salespeople on how to do a proper sales call? I mean, you are putting out your methodology, systems, and scripts out there, and so it's very easy to say, hey, we have a proprietary, sales call formula or system, and it discusses our offer, which is not for public, and so we don't share these due to what we shared with you on the call. We don't release them. Like, I feel like that. I mean, the client will probably be like, what the F, but it still sounds like a pretty reasonable thing to say to stand on.
Yeah, no, it's what I tell clients to do all the time when customers are asking for it. It's just giving that information out. It's more than just their conversation. I mean, their portion of the conversation is this month. And it's not about like, hey, we don't want to let you hear about what I said on the call because we were misrepresenting to you. That's not the case at all. It's more of, hey, the information we're sharing with you is a set and tried and true presentation, and we don't want you to take our proprietary information and send it out. So, two approaches I take with clients. If it's within a week of the sales transaction, the client, the consumer, end consumer, not the company, wants to get access to that, then what I would recommend to do for that is I would recommend to give a link, a short-term link that gives them access to, like, once they click on it, they can get access to listen to it for an hour, and then it goes away. Most, whether it's DocuSign or it's, the cloud or Google Drives or whatever, most have that ability to do that, to expire a link. They get access, they can not download it, they can listen to it, and they're done. Now, does that stop the client from taking out their phone and recording it? No. There's different things they can do with that. So that's still a risky proposition. Anything over a week, I generally just take a pretty standard stance, like, hey, this is proprietary. We're not going to be providing this to you because it contains our company proprietary information. And we just, as a company, we have a policy. We don't share sales recordings with anyone, including the client itself. The only reason we retain those is for a short window of time, just to make sure internally that the representations and the manner that the presentation was made was in line with our scripting. And if we have for internal quality assurance, if we find that there's an issue, then we proactively will reach out to a customer and say, hey, listen, we listened to this and we found out that this and this was said and it's not 100% correct. And so we want to clarify that. And if you decide at that point that you don't want to engage with us, then that's fine. And for everybody, that's exactly the type of internal procedures you should have in store. We shouldn't just say that. You should really do it. So, for example, when I represent telemarketing companies, when they review something and there's a statement that's made that we look at and we're like, hey, this could create a misrepresentation, or it could create an impression that's not correct. What I'll do is I'll have the company flag that in their internal CRM or database, that not just like, hey, customer concern, because can you imagine if you got sued by a regulatory body and they just looked for customer concern in the CRM and they get 100 clients and then, oh, hey, thank you for doing our job for us. That's not what I'm trying to do. But I would come up with some sort of phrase internally that you understand that's like white glove treatment or something like that. And which could mean 100 different things, right? And that's just a key indicator for you to understand, hey, there was something in the sales presentation we weren't good with, whatever it was. It could have been just something slightly that was wrong with like a warranty or the actual service that's being provided. And then I would take that additional follow-up step and reach out to the customer like this. Hey, this is Greg from Quality Assurance. We're just welcoming you on board on everything on this. We noticed when you signed up, there were a couple of statements that were made that we just want to make sure are 100% clear and how we're going to do business. And that's just part of our onboarding process. And it looks like on this, it says you were supposed to get 10 one-on-one coaching sessions. It's actually 8, but we're going to actually, because of you, that was told you, we're going to make sure that we're going to give you 10 for this today. So simple clarification. Doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to say, hey, we listened to the sales call and the sales guy really went off the reservation and did something wrong. Instead, we want to say, hey, we noticed that there were some things that weren't 100% aligned with how we present things, and we want to make sure that the right impression is given. So I'd like to go through a few things with your purchase, if you got a few minutes, just to make sure that it's clear. And then you just clear up, and then you back out of it. And if they're like, hey, I'm not really comfortable with this, I can understand that. That's why we give the right to cancel the transaction. If you want to get out of this, you're welcome to do that at your discretion. And most of the time, it doesn't lead to that. Most of the time, it's like, oh, okay, thanks for letting me know. But on the internal side, then it creates a mechanism on how you review calls. It's not just that we're going to review the calls. We're going to talk to the salesperson that made the call, but we're also going to reach out to the customer and kind of tie that loose end and make sure that they have a correct understanding. So back to the original question. The original question is, I have a consumer that asks for a sales recording call. Within a few days, maybe a link could be appropriate, but after that time, policy, you should have this in a written policy internally, is, hey, we retain these for a short period of time for customer assurance, but because of the proprietary nature of the information in the call, it is not our business policy to give that information, even though you are part of that sales transaction or conversation to any third parties, whether it's you or any other third party. That's how we treat it.
All right. So just to summarize this episode, it's turned into a little bit more than even the question I wanted to ask, which is like, what do you do with sales calls after you have them, which is great. So I want to summarize some things. You tell me if I'm right or wrong. So there's a law called TCPA, guys, that heavily regulates the sales process. If you are accepting the call, if you are accepting the credit card over the phone and you're taking information that is transactional over the phone, you are required to save that portion of the call, not necessarily the whole call. The portion where you took their order, you have to save that chunk for at least 24 months. That's the rule. Now, the best thing to do, and the advice that Greg gave us and the advice that we implemented, is don't take credit card information over the phone. It adds an additional layer of liability. Just say, hey, I'm sending you a link. Go there right now, fill it out. I'll stay on the phone. Please don't share any information about your credit card for privacy reasons. And I think a client would actually appreciate that. So just say, go fill it out. As soon as it transacts, it'll let me know and we'll be good. Now, if that happens, you are now no longer required by law to save those calls for a 24-month period. However, just to clarify also, there is no law that clearly says you have to save these calls at all. So technically, there's no law that says you have to save that call for future records. But what Greg has told us in the past is it just looks a little dodgy and weird that you wouldn't want to, as a company, to have something to reference and to actually do quality control. It doesn't speak well of you. So that's where a document retention policy comes into place, where you say, we have X number of days that we save these calls, keep them on record because we want to be able to access them, review them, and make sure everything's hunky-dory. But past these days, we delete calls and truly actually delete them. Don't make sure they're not sitting on your employees' servers, because then they're discoverable, but delete them and do it so also for privacy reasons. I mean, think about the types of things that are brought up on these calls from your clients. Their name is there, their personal information, they share things with you. You keep that, like I had that all in a big old database. And what if that gets hacked and all those calls, all that info gets out? You're again going to be liable now for privacy issues. So you have a very solid reason to have a document retention policy in place that says, hey, we delete after X number of days to protect the company and the consumer. Greg, what is the number of days that document retention policy? What do you suggest to clients as far as how long they should hold on to their calls?
Well, it changes per client. Some clients have different offers. So normally I'll talk to the client and find out what their offer is. I would say as a rule of thumb, 30 days. It's a long enough time that you could, get the client outside the rescission period, whether it's 3 days, 7 days, 10 days, whatever you give to the client. It also gives enough time for your internal staff to review the transaction, run it through Complyly, whatever, so you can get the feedback, and then you can meet with the salesperson to make sure they understand. Because what I find is when dealing with telemarketers, that some of them are old school. They've been doing this for 20, 30 years. It's like an actor that memorizes a script. And so they're just like, they've been taught a certain way. And regardless of what you say, they fall back into the same same pattern.
Okay.
And so in order to do that, you've got to follow up with a copy of the call and say, hey, here. And if you don't have the call to show them, then they say, I don't believe I said that. They'll challenge it. So that's why 30 days is a good rule of thumb.
Okay. Got it. All right. So have that. That's more of a good to have good business practice. It's not necessarily legally required, but I would say make that a minimum of 30 days. But you have to have an actual document retention policy, guys. And it doesn't just cover sales calls. A proper document retention policy covers all kinds of data. How long do you keep emails? How long do you keep marketing material? How long do you keep your webinars? How long do you, because all of this stuff, the other thing is the storage fees on this. This stuff adds up. The softwares and systems that we use to run these things, they start charging you an arm and a leg to store things that you frankly don't need, are never going to reference, and if anything, are adding liability to you in multiple ways, which was something kind of like an aha moment I had. I was honestly shocked, and I know you were, Greg, that for the size of operation we were running, I didn't even know what a document retention policy was. No one had brought it up to me, and I can show you my legal bills. I had legal representation, thorough, never brought up to me that, hey, this should be a part of your process. And it doesn't take a long time, guys. You can engage Greg and get a document retention policy done very quickly. We'll probably put some templates and things together even inside of Compliant Academy, but I do recommend, even if you use a template, like every time I ask Greg a question, and rightfully so, I get it now, the more and more I've worked in this area, that it is client specific. So like there isn't a standard privacy policy, a standard terms of use. Like you do need to make sure that it covers your specific marketing activities and things you do. So in your document retention policy, based on the type of business you are, based on the types of things you sell, based on the types of niches you're in, Greg will be able to give you a bit more specific advice. But in the end, and then in summarization, if the client or prospective client reaches out within just a few days of having had that call, you can give them an expirable link where they can just listen to it and just say, hey, this is us just doing a favor. Like, our policy is we don't do this, but you asked, so we're doing it. But if it's 7 days or beyond, have a document in your company's corporate policies that says we do not share any sales calls with outside parties due to our proprietary information being shared on those calls. As long as you have that policy, now you're not lying when you tell the client, hey, we have a business company policy, we don't do this. That would be the proper way to address this. But I've had some smart, and I use smart condescendingly, I've had some smart internet marketers come out and say, well, gosh, if telesales are the problem, and if that's the risk factor, I'm just going to delete them completely. And it's like, no. Cool, Greg. We are going to wrap this episode up. And for the full interest of the fact that I have you for a period of time. Yeah, go ahead.
Quick. So one of the questions I'm getting right now is that there are some clients that are like, hey, my recording system doesn't allow me to delete calls. So one of the things that I want to come up with, Onik, is a list of recording systems that actually allows you to. So as we talk to clients that do have the capability, we'll share that with you as well.
Or have Complyly Enterprise.
Yes.
And we are APIing now. As of a month from now, we'll be API capable with like 12 of the top calling systems. Means we have back-end access, and we can delete the calls for you.
Hey,
no matter what
did you
system
like
you're
my
using.
lead into that segment?
Yeah.
I mean, is that,
Yeah.
I'm
So it's
trying to be
coming.
a marketer. What's going on there?
It's still a couple of months away, so it's a little bit ways away. But but what's going to happen though is, and if you're that level of user that you're going to be using our enterprise functionality, and you have a sales team and you have multiple sales reps, I would highly encourage you to make sure your account is protected under attorney-client privilege, which means what you can do is hire Greg, hire Guardian Law, get on retainer with him, and that's between you and him. I don't have any part of that. But then you can come in under the Guardian Law co-label of Complyly, have all the calls, the reviews, and everything protected under attorney-client privilege. Greg has access to all of that, so he can be monitoring and see the scores, and he can get flagged if there's issues going on, so he can proactively help you. But also through that, we can absolutely just put, Greg will have approved that there's a document retention policy in place, and we can lock in a certain period of time at which we actually log into your Zoom systems or into your Ring Central or whatever you're using. And after 29, 30, whatever, 35, 40, you will have complete control of the number of days. We just delete all the calls that are past that. You just need to make sure your whole team knows that, because that's unrecoverable. Once it's deleted, it's deleted. It doesn't exist on any system. And the cool thing about Complyly, just so you guys know, is we built document retention policy even into Complyly, meaning anything you scan, whether it be a sales call or a written document or whatever, you have the control inside the settings to say, hey, after X number of days, delete it. I don't want it in the system anymore. So, we want to respect your privacy and all of that too. So it's a cool little pitch for Complyly. All right. Listen, get the book, support us. At this point, I'm even saying support the revolution, support the compliance revolution. What Greg and I are doing is not being done anywhere else. It's a work of passion and heart. Both Greg and I work 20-hour days on our other businesses and squeeze this in between. And I do want to really take a minute to acknowledge you, Greg. I don't think I've had a chance. I'm always bombarding you with I need this, I need this, I need this. But guys, Greg, I just want you to understand, Greg has flown out to Maryland many times for days at a time, filmed. And if you're a lawyer, every hour you spend filming is an hour you're not billing. And so he's made massive investments into this project. We at Learn, I personally have invested heavily into the project. We have an entire team of people that have worked basically for free to put all this together. It's been a tremendous amount of work, and we are finally at a place where we have all the pieces there that we can actually say we're a business, right? And so we have the book, we have the academy, and we have Complyly, and then we have other things coming out, and Greg and I are going to be announcing, hopefully soon here, a summit that you can come to and hang out. And can you imagine 3 days? So fun, just talking about all this compliance shit in the world. It's just so much fun. It actually really was. Honestly, we ran a beta one, and it was actually pretty fun. So support us. Go to don'tsaythat.com, compliantacademy.com, complyly.com, and let us help however we can. With that said, wish you guys all the very best. Greg, as always, thank you, man. And for the rest of you, when life pushes you, stand straight, smile, push it the heck back, and don't get sued. See you guys on the next one. Bye.